There's a painting that almost no one knows exists. It doesn't hang in the Louvre, the Met, or any famous gallery. In fact, you've probably never seen it before this moment. And there's a reason for that. This haunting masterpiece likely still decorates the walls of private Victorian estates, collected by families with a fascination for the forbidden, the occult, and the taboo. Created in 1878 by an artist history nearly forgot, this work reveals something disturbing about human nature itself. The painter's name was Luis Ricardo Falero, and while his homeland ignored him during his lifetime, his art became treasured by wealthy collectors who couldn't resist what society told them to fear. Today, we're diving deep into one of his most controversial works, Witches Going to Their Sabbath. What you're looking at isn't just a painting, it's a portal into Victorian obsession, repressed desire, and the dark underbelly of 19th century high society. Let's explore why this image was so captivating that collectors would pay fortunes to own it, and what secrets it reveals about the era that created it. Take a moment to really look at this painting. Your eyes might not know where to focus first. Flying witches spiral through a midnight sky. Skeletal figures twist and contort. A massive goat dominates the composition. A black cat stares directly outward with knowing eyes. And yes, there's even a skeletal pelican, an image so bizarre we'll need to unpack its meaning later. Falero accomplished something remarkable and unsettling. He merged raw eroticism with witchcraft, wrapping both in a style so technically perfect, so elegantly executed that viewers couldn't look away. The painting pulls you in. You feel drawn to these figures, compelled by their beauty and movement. But beneath that attraction lies something darker, something that feels almost dangerous to acknowledge. This wasn't accidental. Falero knew exactly what he was doing. He created a visual descent into humanity's shadow side, where desire and darkness intertwine. To understand why this painting exists, we need to understand the world that demanded it. Late 19th century Victorian England presented a fascinating paradox. On the surface, society championed morality, restraint, proper behavior, and Christian virtue. Public life was rigidly controlled, especially for women. Propriety ruled everything. But behind those closed doors and heavy curtains, a different world thrived. The occult wasn't lurking in dark alleys or hidden basements. It had infiltrated the drawing rooms of high society itself. Wealthy families hosted seances in their elegant parlors. Published manuals explained how to summon spirits and communicate with the dead. Bookshops sold texts on alchemy, Freemasonry, tarot, astrology, and ancient grimoires. This wasn't a fringe movement. It was a cultural phenomenon sweeping through the upper classes. Collectors filled their private cabinets with ritual objects, human skulls, rare fossils, and mysterious artifacts. And most importantly, they commissioned and purchased art that reflected this fascination. But they didn't want crude or obvious imagery. They wanted sophistication. They wanted art that blended beauty with mystery, that awakened forbidden feelings without openly acknowledging them. They wanted to gaze into darkness while maintaining their respectable reputations. Luis Ricardo Falero gave them exactly what they craved. Though born in Spain, Falero found his true audience in London. He recognized what Victorian collectors secretly hungered for, a perfect fusion of sensuality, science, and sorcery, all presented with impeccable artistic skill. Falero's technical abilities were undeniable. He painted the human form with academic precision, demonstrating mastery of anatomy, light, and composition. His nude figures could hang alongside any classical painting. But then he placed these perfectly rendered women in impossible situations, floating through starlit skies, surrounded by occult symbols, mythical beasts, and ritual imagery. His work straddled worlds. He actually collaborated with Camille Flammarion,
a respected French astronomer who popularized cosmological knowledge. For Flammarion, Falero created illustrations of constellations, celestial bodies, and allegorical zodiac representations. He was simultaneously working with science and the supernatural. But witches going to their Sabbath marked a definitive turn. He left behind the planets and stars, diving instead into pure nightmare. And paradoxically, this darker direction is what his collectors valued most. Victorian society desperately wanted to peer into forbidden territories without anyone noticing their fascination. Falero's paintings provided the perfect cover, culturally sophisticated, technically brilliant, but secretly transgressive. Now, let's dissect what we're actually seeing. Every element in this painting carries meaning, layered with symbolism from occult tradition, religious persecution, and repressed Victorian psychology. Start with the title itself. Sabbath, or sometimes spelled Sabbat, isn't a random word. Its roots trace to Hebrew, Shabbat, meaning rest, the sacred seventh day. But in medieval Christian Europe, this Jewish tradition became weaponized. Rumors spread that Jews weren't resting on Saturdays, but performing satanic rituals. This propaganda deliberately associated Judaism with demonic evil. This lie merged with another tradition from Basque culture. The word Akelarre combines Aker, meaning billy goat, with Lare, meaning meadow, the meadow of the goat. Folklore claimed the devil manifested in remote wilderness areas, taking the form of a massive black goat, gathering witches for nighttime rituals. Spanish artist Francisco Goya had painted this concept decades earlier in his disturbing works. Falero revived the imagery, making it even more visceral and immediate. Look at the central figure, the goat, moving leftward, seemingly leading this procession of souls. Two women cling desperately to its horns. One appears young and beautiful, her expression unreadable as she gazes outward. Is that defiance? Ecstasy? Resignation? The ambiguity is intentional. The second woman looks older, her face shadowed and almost pleading, reaching toward one of the younger witches floating nearby. This raises the painting's central question. Are these women riding the devil by choice, or are they being taken against their will? Are they willing participants in transgression, or are they victims of a force beyond control? Falero refuses to answer. The ambiguity makes the painting more powerful and more disturbing.
Surrounding the goat, naked women swirl through the darkness in a hypnotic spiral pattern. This isn't mere decoration. In esoteric tradition, the spiral represents transition, transformation, and passage between different states of reality. Here's something crucial to understand. In actual occult belief, the witch's flight was never meant literally. It represented a spiritual journey, a trance state induced through herbal ointments, meditation, or altered consciousness. The flight symbolized transcending ordinary reality, accessing hidden knowledge, or connecting with spiritual forces. But the painting presents this metaphor visually, making the internal external, transforming psychological experience into physical imagery. On the right side, notice the menagerie of creatures: a black cat with penetrating eyes, a bat in mid-flight, a salamander representing alchemical fire, and that strange skeletal pelican. In occult tradition, these are familiars, spirit helpers that assist witches in their magical work. Today, we might see them as fantasy elements, but in the 15th and 16th centuries, belief in familiars was dangerously real. The skeletal pelican carries particular significance. In ancient Christian iconography, the pelican symbolizes sacrifice, specifically Christ's sacrifice. Medieval bestiaries claimed pelicans would pierce their own breasts to feed their young with their blood. But here, Falero presents a skeletal, dead pelican, perhaps suggesting the death of Christian sacrifice or its corruption into something darker. To fully grasp what this painting represents, we must confront a horrifying historical text, the Malleus Maleficarum, published in 1487. This book,
whose title translates as The Hammer of Witches, became one of history's most dangerous documents. The text claimed women were inherently more susceptible to demonic influence due to their weaker nature and carnal desires. It described Sabbaths as demonic orgies, where sexuality became the gateway to hell itself. This book provided intellectual justification for the torture and murder of countless women across Europe. Falero's painting engages directly with this legacy. But here's his subversive twist. There's no blood in this image, no flames, no torture, no obvious horror. Instead, we see beauty, graceful movement, and luminous bodies. The painting becomes unsettling precisely because it presents evil not through fear, but through attraction and desire. This might be the darkest element of all. Falero isn't showing us demonic horror we can easily reject. He's showing us forbidden beauty we can't help but find compelling. Witches Going to Their Sabbath works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it's a technically masterful painting with classical composition and skillful execution. One level deeper, it's a representation of occult mythology and folklore. But at its core, it's about Victorian society's relationship with its own repressed desires. The painting allowed respectable collectors to possess images of female sexuality, pagan spirituality, and transgressive content, while framing it as cultural interest in mythology and the occult. It provided plausible deniability for desires society forbade. Falero understood this perfectly. He gave Victorian society exactly what it wanted, a sophisticated excuse to gaze at what was forbidden.
Today, Witches Going to Their Sabbath reveals something universal about human psychology. We're drawn to what we're told to fear. We're fascinated by the forbidden, and we'll create elaborate justifications to pursue what society tells us to reject. The painting also documents a specific historical moment when Western society was transforming. Science was challenging religious authority. Women were beginning to question their assigned roles. Ancient beliefs were being rediscovered and reinterpreted. The occult revival wasn't just about spirits and magic. It was about people seeking alternatives to rigid Victorian morality. Falero captured this tension perfectly, the collision between propriety and desire, science and superstition, beauty and darkness. Now that you've explored this painting's depths, what's your reaction? Does it make you uncomfortable? Curious? Both? The best art provokes complex responses we can't easily categorize. This painting contains layers we couldn't fully explore in one video. Every figure, every creature, every shadow likely carries additional meaning. If you notice something significant that wasn't discussed, that's part of the painting's richness. Luis Ricardo Falero died in 1896, largely forgotten by the mainstream art world. But his works remain powerful, challenging, and strangely relevant. They remind us that what society forbids often becomes what we most desire to understand. The painting you just explored doesn't hang in any museum. It remains hidden, just as it was meant to be. A secret pleasure, a forbidden vision, a glimpse into darkness disguised as art. And perhaps that's exactly where it belongs,